hope that at this point in the evolution of the world, most of us realize that we live in our stories, stories that we tell ourselves based on what we've experienced. So these could be stories about the world and how it works, stories about ourselves and our role in the world, stories about what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. But there are two things that I think most people don't realize about our stories. These two things I definitely didn't realize about living in our stories. I'm a little slow in these things. And the first one is that our stories don't stop. We never stop telling ourselves stories. All we can do is change the stories that we tell ourselves. And the second thing is we don't understand and appreciate the damage we can cause to ourselves, our communities, and our society with some of the stories that we tell ourselves. So this is one of the newest stories I found hiding in myself. And that sounds a little creepy, and it is creepy. It's really freaking creepy when you realize you have all these thoughts, ideas, and stories hiding inside you. So this is one of the newest stories I found inside of me. And it's one that I've realized is one of the most damaging stories I've ever told myself. And it starts like most stories do, when I was a kid. So I was born in the middle of a 10-year war. And that war was an indirect consequence of huge political change that was happening in the country. But both the war and the political change were direct consequences of abuse of power. And when I was 4 years old, we left the country, we left as refugees, and we moved to Italy. And Italy was our processing center. I was old enough to go to school, so I had to go to school. But the only school that had space or that was available was a Catholic school. So now you have an Iranian Muslim refugee going to a Catholic school in the 1980s in a small town in Italy. You can imagine how much fun that was. The nuns had no idea what to do with me. I was so far outside their idea of what could exist in their communities that unfortunately they did what most people do. They chose fear instead of curiosity. They ignored me. They isolated me. They locked me in the closet and they wouldn't let me speak or play with the other children. What they did was combine their fear with their power and take abusive action. Well, 1 year later, we moved to our final destination, where I saw yet again power being abused in the education system, in the judicial system, and on the streets over and over and over again. So now we have war, we have revolution, we have mistreatment by teachers, we have police brutality. I saw the actions, the consequences, and many, many times the complete lack of consequences of abuse of power across three very different cultures and countries. And this is a bit of a side note, but I do want to make this clear that abuse of power is not limited to or concentrated in certain societies and then other societies are immune to it. No, abuse of power is everywhere. Now, going back to the beginning of this talk, to the stories that we tell ourselves, the story I told myself was that all power leads to abuse and that power is inherently bad. And I told myself this story because that was the main reference of power that I had until that point. Well, fast forward to the adult version of me, the person who wants so badly to be in a position of power so that she can do just a little bit of good in this world. And also because I never, ever wanted to be actively abused by power again. Now, pause and think for a minute how challenging it is and how incredibly messed up it is to want power to create amazing positive change in the world and to protect yourself and protect others, and at the same time secretly, silently, and sincerely believing that all power is inherently bad. Now, I had known already that my reactions to power and people in power were a little bit exaggerated. I feared it. I stayed away from it. I became silent in front of it. I made myself invisible so that I couldn't be abused by it. But I genuinely thought that it was because, well, everyone else just has this magic skill in terms of power and power relations that I just don't have, right? Like, I missed school the day that they taught that. So I decided to school myself instead. I practiced looking people in the eye. I practiced speaking up. I studied leadership and management. but it didn't work. And it didn't work because even though my actions changed, my stories around power didn't. So even when I finally did get a seat at the table, I still didn't speak up when it really mattered. I did not speak up when it really mattered. And this really confuses people who know me, because I'm loud, I'm bold, I'm outspoken, but only in the spaces where I feel safe to be so. And that's what I've had to unlearn, that I personally will never feel safe unless and until I change my story and I learn to speak up and live into my power. So I started to tell myself a new story, a story that power is a mighty but neutral tool. Power is a tool of both the past and the future. Power asks the person who holds it, power asks that the person who holds it decides what beliefs and systems of doing and being they're going to bring from the past into the present and what future they're going to create with that. Power, authority, leadership, these are tools of culture and legacy, but power itself is neutral. Power is a chameleon. Power takes on the intentions of the person who holds it. And way, way too often, I have seen the intentions of people in power wrapped around their insecurities, bringing fear, ego, command and control, racism, sexism, and every other type of ism, the worst parts of culture, bringing those forward to build their legacy on. That is how many people choose to use their power. And I am very clear that that is a choice. Now, for me, with this new story, the story that power is a mighty but neutral tool, I have chosen to change my focus. And I am now actively looking for examples of power and leadership that is messy but human, that makes mistakes but owns up to it, takes accountability for it. Examples of power and leadership that lead from the heart and not from fear and ego. Examples of power and leadership who ask themselves and examine their thoughts and question themselves and ask, how can I be better and not just do better? And by changing my story and changing my focus, my actions are starting to slowly change as well. I'm starting to call things out and call people in. I am starting to claim my spaces. I am starting to say no to what I know is wrong and saying yes to opportunities of power. And with every single decision that I make, with every decision that I make using my power, I'm consciously asking myself, what is the culture I want to bring forward and what is the legacy I want to leave behind? So I'm starting to harness my power, own my power, and live into my power with positive intent. Now, what are the odds that the girl you heard about 10 minutes ago, who was locked in the closet by adults who feared her, could be standing here or sitting here with you today? What are the odds that any of us can take our stories, our narratives, and make them mean something different, something else, something better? In my experience, the odds are pretty damn high. And trust me, I am not where I want to be or where I personally need to be in terms of speaking up and living into my power, but I am close. I am really freaking close. Standing here, sitting here, talking to you on this platform, speaking my truth, this is power. Thank you.